Strange how the waters will reflect the moods of men, the character of those that live upon its banks. This is a tale of a Welsh river. Like all rivers, clouded, nowadays disturbed. The story I'm telling you has no end. The moving waters are their priest-like task of pure ablution, says it keeps the poet. Well, waters can heal and pour their balm on tired minds. When I set out, I wasn't seeking trouble or the Teifi. Just a pleasant, restful journey where the fancy took me. But we're an island people, and never in our wanderings far from water. Where I was heading for, although I didn't know it then, the smallest and yet oldest boat we know was once again making a history, albeit in a quiet way. Through the pleasant southlands, a brief lingering by wayside beauty, brief because on the route I took there is no shortage. Strange tranquility, peaceful scenes undisturbed by the discordant note of troubles in this rapidly changing world. It was, once again onwards, in this way, I came to, yes, inevitably, I came to Wales. Bold mountain ranges, they create a breadth of feeling. Bold, courageous people who wrest from the ground the living. Ground that gives hesitantly, yet with good husbandry will yield enough for man and beast. Here, in these wild hills, sheep from the surrounding areas were being brought in for their annual dipping. No trouble here, except for the task in hand. Talking to the men, friends of mine from previous visits, whilst they worked, they did tell me of troubles elsewhere on a river called the Teifi, of a peaceful village and troubled waters. This village, they tell me, was miles away across the mountains. Down towards the sea in Cardiganshire. Across the mountains, they said, to the southwest. What they tell me had a certain fascination, so once again away I went, this time with a fixed objective. Cenarth was the village they tell me of, and in due course it was to Cenarth I came. I knew neither Cenarth nor its people. The guidebook told me of its church, mentioned, as so many other things about this village were mentioned, by Geraldus Cambrensis in his medieval tour of Wales. The guidebook told me, too, of the mill and Cenarth Bridge, and how, in Edward II's time, the waters here were known as the King's Weir and the fisheries of Cenarth. Stand on the bridge at Cenarth, and in due course you'll meet the village. But while you wait, there is rough music in the air, never stopping through the ages, and it comes from where the salmon and the suin play, leaping a cataract, as Geraldus put it, about the height of the longest spear. This was the Teifi, whose history is full of salmon, snout and plain, but does not an ancient record state that farm servants made it a condition of service that salmon be not served more than twice a week. This was Kenneth. This is people whom as yet I did not know. Shy to a stranger, but whose hospitality I was soon to know in full. I wandered round, and by discreet inquiry learned a thing or two. These were the Jones brothers, who between them turned their hands to most things. Interesting and diverse characters I was to find. This was another brother, a lonely one, devoted to the sounds of language, in a solitary way, a reader and a poet. Then, some miles down the bank, I heard of another man, a wondrous craftsman in wood, they said, and told me of a machine he'd made, a simple lathe in wood, that once he'd taken up to London for all the world to see. Here was a man who had a way with wood, who loved its grain and fibre, and understood its every strength and weakness. Away from the world, he plied his enviable craft with speed and exquisite skill. Rough rosewood and cherry turned to smooth perfection. His eye told him that the heart was sound before he brought his skill to bear. Thus he could work with the confidence of years and the affection that only time can bring. Just for the asking, he made, whilst I watched, a satin silk spoon from a piece of Welsh sycamore. Then the spokeshave handled it in his own inimitable way, the wood firmly on the knee, the arm working at incredible speed. Never a mistake, for the wood was sound, and the craftsmanship impeccable. The final scooping of the bowl completed, and there were the results. Be it bowl or spoon, a joy to behold, and most of all, the handle. Back along the river, I saw how they did the sheep at Cenarth. A little less formality than I'd seen it up in the hills, no concrete baths for Cenarth sheep, as for all who lived there, the river sufficed. But, though interested in sheep dipping, my attention was taken more by the little craft I saw in the river. They were much closer to my purpose. That was why I soon sought out another craftsman who lived on the Teifi's banks, a Mr. Thomas, who knew how to make these strange little craft, and fashion them regularly for the Fisherman of Cenarth. They, it was, I'd been told, were the focal point of the trouble on the Teifi, they and their little boats, which were a direct descendants of those the ancient Britons used upon this very river, the coracles. But before I pursue the matter further on the principle of first things first, I went to watch John at the business of building a coracle. Go into the woods, he said, and cut enough stout branches, 8 feet for length and 5 feet for breadth. These willow branches must now be cleaved in two, and then the parts are trimmed and shaved. For a coracle of its essence must be light, a negligible weight to float on the Teifi, and negligible to carry on one's back. Now, lay them out by eye, he said. 7 U-shaped frames are what they'll be attached to, and never a nail. So, interweave them well for strength and put weights, if you have them, at the points of intersection. Suppleness, too. So you soak them well in water. And what better water than the Teifi, where they'll spend their lives afloat? The supply of hazelwood is too. Treated as they should be, the better to keep a man afloat on the Teifi's turbulent waters. "3 bands," said John, 3 strong bands of plated withes, with a gunwale, and a stout deal plank for the seat. At one time, the covering was hide, which gave way to flannel, and today, calico. So, the 5 yards of unbleached calico stretched tight and lapped with wire. This alone, when treated, will keep the water out. 5 yards of calico stretched on frames and never a wrinkle. Now, boiling pitch with lard and linseed. Pitch kept boiling. The life of a coracle is indefinite, and slight damage can be repaired by a tarred patch. Not much different it is making today from the other description. Form the slight twigs with flannel case, or which 3 coats of tar are placed. Short and squat is a Teifi coracle, 34 pounds in weight, and it floats in 2 inches of water. This, then, was the Teifi coracle. Today, only on 5 rivers in Great Britain have one through the coracles. The Tay, Pat, Severn, Dee, and the most picturesque of all, the Teifi. On its foaming waters were seen more coracles than anywhere else. The Teifi coracle was born on the Teifi through the fast-flowing waters. These men, who walk silently and thoughtfully at certain appointed hours of the day and night, drift downstream, or walk the journey back, fitting so perfectly the description given of them in an old print. Men who, in numerous parts, pursue their trade, in coracles themselves was made, and, as the porter bears his pack, each mounts his vessel on his back. These numerous pairs have considerably decreased, which roughly accounts the trouble on the Teifi, one of the best rivers for breeding of salmon in the British Isles. The trouble was of using a net to catch salmon in non-tidal waters. Net fishing from a coracle in the non-tidal waters of the Teifi at Cenarth has been going on without interruption from at least the 12th century. Thus, the oldest little industry in the land is now threatened with extinction. To discover why was actually the reason why I came. From time immemorial, the men of Cenarth have been using their nets in the non-tidal waters for salmon in the Teifi. Down at the estuary in tidal water. Upstream where the riparians, the rod and line men, fish in fresh water. The point of dispute is in the non-tidal waters between Electric Bridge and Cenarth. In search of facts, I walked again along the Teifi's deceptively peaceful banks, who better, I thought, than the superintendent of the river to find out the facts. So in due course, I found myself outside his cottage.
Well, I've been wandering up and down this lovely river of yours, and I've heard so many conflicting opinions about this net fishing on the river that I thought I'd better come to you and get the facts.
Facts about what?
Well, about this controversy, this dispute.
Well, I can give you facts, but I'm not going to give you any opinion.
No, I expect you have a...
He was a gracious and friendly man, and impartial. He explained that down the estuary, in the tidal waters, netting is quite legitimate. The fishermen use the traditional boats and nets. He explained that fishing for salmon with a net from a coracle or any other boat wasn't in dispute in tidal waters. Indeed, it was a general custom everywhere. Upstream to Electric Bridge, the river is tidal. The Teifi is a narrow, small, swiftly flowing river, and the point of dispute is whether the coracle fishermen, netting between Electric Bridge upstream to Cenarth to the falls, are taking a greater toll of fish than nature can afford, and thus depriving the riparians, or the rod and line men, upstream of their sport. riparians claim that the overnetting denudes the river, and that the toll and innkeepers upstream are being hard hit by the constant decline in river sport. And my request is stated impartially, but riparians claim that only in Cenarth does it still exist, and therefore control is necessary, and those coracle men should be brought into line with the rest of Great Britain. I thank the superintendent for his exposition and pointed out that the Welsh were never renowned for getting into line. As I left him, I pondered on the arguments I had heard. The men of Cenarth were unique in a world of growing government. I knew rebellion was native to their blood, that even their ancestors had never taken kindly to outside interference. When licensing fees were reintroduced in 1861, a number had preferred Carmarthen jail to paying, and yet I also knew they had been loyal citizens. I knew also that the last lingering representatives of an ancient industry had submitted to certain restrictions. Only for 1 hour before sunrise and after sunset may they fish in darkness. They have altered their nets and extended their close seasons, and yet their fixed determination was to rescind the hated bylaw. I knew that they believed passionately, to quote one, God that created the world including the tidy, not for a select few, but for all. I thought it best and fairest to meet these men of Cenarth and hear their story as they said it. First, I'd been told to find and speak with Mr. Llewellyn. I was a stranger, so I thought I'd better try the pub. Mary, I'll call her that, for I came to know her quite well, as I did the rest, came to greet me. It seemed the instinct of a stranger was wrong this time.
Well, I could find a Mr. Llewellyn, please.
Well, you won't find him here.
No.
But I know Mr. Llewellyn very well. He lives in that house on the corner by the bridge.
Oh, thanks. Well, I'll go and try it.
I don't think you'll find him in. If not, I'll look along the river.
All right. Thanks very much. I'm very grateful to you.
Welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Any luck?
No, they don't seem to rise very well this morning.
Excuse me, you wouldn't be Mr. Llewellyn, would you?
No, my name is Luke, after the apostle. Commonly known around here as Yento. If anything I can help you, I'd be quite pleased to do so.
Well, that's very nice of you, but I think perhaps I'd better find Mr. Llewellyn.
Well, that's up to you.
I was lucky the second time. I saw on the bridge 81-year-old Fred Llewellyn, the Coracle King of Cenarth.
Excuse me, are you Mr. Llewellyn?
I am Mr. Llewellyn.
Oh, I'm very glad to meet you. I'd like to have a few words with you.
Well, I guess what you want to talk about.
Can you? What do you think?
Well, I expect that it's the trouble that we are having on the river Teifi.
Yes, I've heard that there's trouble on the Teifi.
Well, there it is.
Not much misses the ears of the people of Cenarth, despite the roaring of the waters. In his own way, he told me of his beloved river, of its history, for he was well informed, of the changes since its boyhood, of the estuary which was then open, and, quoting a local poet, which swinging astride the rhythmic tide bore to the harbour bark and sloop, of the silting up today, and of the sadness where arguses that wooed the breeze, simple sheep are feeding now. Saddest of all, he said, the threatened disappearance of the coracle men. Already, he said, their kind is gone, vanished forever, from Ireland and from the Us, from the Wye and from the Mono, and that in living memory. In Scotland, it is many years since the last coracle danced upon the Worcester Stay. In a few short years, will the Teifi too join them? That was the burden. The sad burden, Mr. Llewellyn, this conversation on the bridge.
You've seen the river, haven't you?
Yes, I have.
And you've seen the coracles,
Yes.
which we use on the river.
Yes. The most important of all is the man that uses the coracle. I quite agree. Have you seen them? No, I haven't. Emlyn, get along.
So-called Emlyn over, I was about to make my first acquaintanceship with the Jones brothers, whom I'd seen in my walking round the village, of whom I'd heard so much.
This is Will. Here's Emlyn. This is Fred. And here's John. We mustn't forget John. I just want to speak to him about the coracles and the river.
Did he tell you about the disc too? I next want to tell him about that.
Well, as a matter of fact, it goes much deeper than that. The coracle is a very ancient craft. It was used for the ancient Britons. And it has been mentioned by Geraldus Cambrensis in his book on his journey through Wales. Well, as a matter of fact, in one part of the book, he describes the village.
John, you better leave that story alone, or else we'll be here all night. He's a big leader, you know. He looks very much like an ancient Briton himself.
One of the best things for us to do is we take him on pier fishing. Literally.
All right, I should like to very much. When?
When you like. Tomorrow then.
Hey.
While they waited for the morrow, I pondered on the problems of the men of Cenarth. Did the rigid demands of the modern world find it possible to temper the wind of the men who live by the water? I went and talked with John Jones, the one his brother said had read too much. The small, dark Welshman shares in his belief in the human right. There are two nets, he said, large and small according to season, with a maximum length of 20 feet when mounted. But then he left its practicalities to tell me tales of the legends that of Teifi the bard, who was wrapped by his mother in a leathern bag and flung into the sea, and how the leathern bag was undoubtedly a coracle in skin and hide. Well, the next morning, I too was to be wrapped in a bag of calico, made by Mr. Thomas, and, like Teifi himself, go swirling, not into the sea, but from Cenarth down to Blackbeard Ridge. Just as Llewellyn and Will were in the first coracle, and I was to go down with John, that we might talk as we floated. I saw how suitable a craft it was for such rocky waters, and how much skill went into the navigation. This exceeding simplicity, the figure of 8 movement, that kept us still or propelled her far ahead. There were unwritten laws, I gather. No pair goes down until the predecessors have reached a certain point. That was why Fredden and Emlyn set out later from Cenarth Bridge. They were friendly boys, yet, like John, full of Welsh independence. Little more than a century ago, men along this village river had taken crowbars and, rightly or wrongly, destroyed the weir at Blackbeard. The wives, more recently, had pelted officialdom in the person of one, Ben Will, from the confines of their village. But perhaps in this instance, authority had the case. It was not for me, an outsider, to pass hasty judgment, but rather to concentrate for the moment on fishing. The fish I found were never referred to as salmon, but always as them. Have you seen them? That was the question. Well, it looks as though Will and Llewellyn have seen them. Yes, I think something's in the net. Now, Will takes out the little wooden mallet called, no one quite knows why, the priest. A smack on the head and an elegant salmon leaves the Teifi. Do they, these coracle men, denude the stream, or don't they? The riparians upstream say yes, enlightened public opinion say what they take out is negligible. When we got back to our starting point, we found Luke that ardent spoken there, as usual, and eager to know the result.
Yes, one. You don't call that, what's your name, John? Denuding the stream. Did you ever use such nonsense?
That's a nice word, John.
Nonsense or no, Mr. Llewellyn indicated that he wanted words with me. My mind filled with arguments by John's scathing pronouncement about denuding the stream, I went with said Llewellyn, that gentle old rebel.
Well, if you want to know more of the facts, you better come with me to the meeting tomorrow night.
Yes, what time is that, Mr. Llewellyn?
At 6 o'clock. In the hall, it will be wet, but if it'll be fine, we'll have it on the rocks for you.
Yes, right, Olin. Let's go to the meeting tomorrow night.
What about the poachers?
Oh, well, better leave that alone.
That's right.
Well, it's a very good meeting, thank you. Here we are.
I told you we'd meet again. Here we are.
Yes, well, you're quite right, but look, now that we have left Mr. Luke, I couldn't help hearing in the meeting up there about this poaching. I'd like to know a bit more about it.
Well, you better see the water bailiff about that.
Well, I'd like to very much, but where can I find him?
Well, take your rod up into the woods in a dark night, and he'll find you.
Towards evening, I went in search of Water Bailiff Campbell. The Water Bailiff was about his appointed duties, but in due course, I caught up with him.
Well, they told me up at Cenarth that if I put a net down on a dark night, you'd find me, but I thought it better not to take any chances.
Well, certainly you would stand a good chance of running into us that way, but I can think of many more pleasant ways.
Yes.
Yes, of course, there's no denying the fact that down in these tidal waters here we do have a little trouble like that.
Yes.
And a good deal of our work is at night, trying to keep these illegal nets out of the water.
How is it done?
Well, they have normally, you know, the coracle men go down, there are two of them, and they draw the normal legal net between them.
Yes.
But sometimes I think the temptation of the fish in the pool there is too much for them, and they have a net sometimes up to 40 feet long, close mesh, and they tie it to the bank.
Yes.
This is done at night, of course.
Yes.
And
So, after sunset, we went along together, with only the sound of water, and the night noises in the trees, and an occasional word from Water Bailiff Campbell. The river is patrolled, and here Water Bailiff Campbell and his colleagues have spotted an illegal net.
I think there's one over there, just on the bend there, just off the relief of that. Can you see it?
Yes, I got it.
Good. Bring it in. What is it? Salmon or steering?
Salmon, sir.
Oh, good. Oh, well, another one to the bonfire.
That's right.
On our way, we passed some coracle men setting out after sunset to drift downstream in search of them, as men had done through lonely centuries. Night was setting in once more, bringing temporary peace to the Teifi, and at the men of Cenarth, another day was ending to the gentle roar of immemorial waters. The next day was clear and fine, but as the day wore on, more clouded, more fitting for the tale of trouble on this remote and lovely river. I'd hoped that it would stay fine, that I might hear their case stated by them not in the village hall, but by the river itself. They knew their case without a meeting, but they believed it should be aired as frequently as possible, and at 6 we gathered on the rocks. Mr. Luke, with his true Welsh fluency, made and remade his deeply felt point views done for many years.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you know that there's a war on between the authorities and the coracle industry. It is a shame that they're trying to eliminate it out from the face of the river. I remember hundreds of coracles on the river, from Newcastle Emlyn down to the estuary, apart from 20 or more boats out from St. Ogwell with 7 men in each boat. And still there were mounds of salmon brought in every night. Well, what's wrong? It's not the coracles. There is a barrier of silted sand at the mouth of the estuary, where the salmon got to stay before they can get sufficient water to come up the river. If that if a channel was opened there and that barrier of filtered sun moved away, the river would be as plentiful as ever of salmon. Why then put the fault on the Coracle?
Well, Mr. Chairman, could you make that point a little more clear to me, please?
Well, the position now is this, that since the bylaw of 1933 was passed, only those fishermen in existence at the time could carry on. There'd be no new licenses to be issued to anyone. That is the present position here. And when the fishermen who are now fishing die off, no other licenses will be issued. And so the fishing industry, which has been carried on here for centuries, will be finished.
Yes, and when the Coracle will end, the people in the district will be sorry. It has been an industry for centuries now, and a campaign is on to try and keep it alive. There's a good feeling between all fishermen and the Coracle men. There are no scarcity of fish in the river. If there is, it's because that the authorities will not open a channel at the mouth of the river. If they'd only do that, salmon again would be plentiful for line fishermen and the Coracle.
Before I left, one last signal honor still awaited me. There was one pool, I had been told, which was known to all and sundry as Hannah Reese's pool. But Hannah fished no more, for she was 80 pounds. Yet for a stranger, she might once more be prevailed upon. So Hannah appeared. In honor of the stranger, or perhaps to give dignity to the arguments that have been stated so clearly, she put on once more her traditional costume. And like a queen, for she was well respected, came out to do a little ceremonial fishing, complete with her daughters, and the men she'd known over so many years. As she fishes, does she reflect with the wisdom that comes with age on the troubles of the Teifi, of the rights of men, and of those long gone whose likenses died with them, and of those still remaining whose likenesses will die with them too, never to be replaced? Does she, in the eventide of life, still feel that they who walk in pairs are right? Will, who is stout-hearted and full of quiet fun. John, by contrast, quiet with a deeper force of life. Fred, the unassuming. Emlyn, dry and stringent in his talk. Old Fred Llewellyn, hospitable and shrewd. Luke, like the true apostle, with the gift of tongues. And Hannah Reeves herself, a dowager by right of years. When I left, all the village were there to see me off. So I said goodbye to Kenneth and to the Teifi. And so the story I could never finish. The mountains were waiting, and beyond, the orthodox world, where authority is more readily accepted. But as I started my journey back, their faces and their cries were with me, and in my ears, the ceaseless, restless roaring of the Teifi's troubled waters.